I'm Wanda Payton.
And I'm Suzanne Jessica Arriaga.
And tonight is our final 12-week class. Please excuse my voice because I've got a little bit of bronchitis going on here. But we're going to do our best tonight. This is our final class. We really enjoyed these past 12 weeks. Right, Suzanne? It's been a blast.
Yes. It's been a blast, and it's been wonderful to be working with all of you. Plus, added bonus, I don't know about you, Wanda, but I feel like I learned a lot too.
I did too. That was the best of all. You teach what you need to learn. So tonight,
yep.
we're going to set an intention. That tonight's class is amazing. We're going to do an overview of the past 12 weeks. And so we just set an intention that you'll remember if you attended, and if you didn't attend these particular classes, that you'll be informed as to what we talked about. And even tonight, there's such powerful, valuable information that you'll be able to pick up on something that will indeed enhance your life. What's your
My intention for everyone is that as we go over the 12 weeks, it kind of jogs everyone's memory of what they could be doing that could really help them to reach their goals. And maybe if they missed something, they can pick that back up and maybe listen to the entire recording to see what they missed. But I just hope that this jogs everyone's memory as to what we need to do to reach our goals and how we need to manage our emotions. And we've given all these tips and tactics of how to do that, and this will be an overview to jog our memories. So then let's get started.
Let's get started. We're not gonna really do housekeeping tonight, are we?
No housekeeping. I think everybody probably knows *6, right?
Yeah.
*6 mute, and you have to excuse me because tonight is the night that I have if you hear the little crying in the backyard, that's my puppy because my husband's not home. But I will *6 or mute as much as I can. But I think she should be okay. She should calm down. So
our first class was what? Circle of Life?
Well, it was just an overview of what the class is going to be about, but then we also went over the Circle of Life, if you guys remember, and we passed out this handout for everyone to kind of look at where they were in their lives and what things they wanted to improve upon so they could decide what they wanted to work on during the 12 weeks. So we just wanted to jog your memory on that, and it might be a good time to go back and do it again and see if you've changed, if you've been doing the exercises, if you've increased your happiness in any of the areas you wanted to increase in. So that was pretty much week 1.
And then week 2, we talked about goals. We actually, if you remember, we said that habits are routine behaviors that tend to occur unconsciously. And we mentioned that they are a fixed way of thinking based on past experiences. And while they're a part of daily life, we said that they can make or break our happiness. We talked about patterns. And one of the biggest misconceptions we talked about was that habits take about 21 days to develop a new one. And the truth is, and this is in Suzanne's book, Nourish to Flourish, that it depends on many factors. That the person, environmental factors, and the habit itself. And some habits just form more quickly than others. And we mentioned that one recent study found that it took participants between 18 and sometimes 254 days to develop a new habit. So we encouraged you not to get discouraged. And then our next slide was, we talked about, and we asked you to ask the question, are you pursuing the right goal? Like when we were setting goals, we talked about keeping your authentic self in the forefront of your mind, and that the best goals are about improving who you are as a person. We said that goals can have a monetary aspect, but this should be byproduct of the goals. And then excuse me, we wanted to remind you to realize that in the pursuit of your goals, that you're going to make mistakes. And remember that life is a journey and an experiment. And you may get off track, and that's okay, but you can decide to get right back on and and continue on that road. I also shared a story with you about the young lady who decided to be a real estate agent, if you recall, because her father, who passed away, wanted her to, and she was miserable. And so when she became conscious that this wasn't her goal, she went ahead and then she switched, and she wanted to become a peace officer. And we talked about short-term goals, eudaimonia, vision board, and that those are some processes that we mentioned to help us with our goal setting.
And then in week 3, we got into the power of thoughts. And we asked you, had you ever really thought about your thoughts and how powerful they were and how powerful they were in actually shaping your life? And we said that most people don't really think about their thoughts. We asked you to take a look at your thoughts and actually listen to them and realize that they do have power. And also we talked about the fact that each one of us has between 60 and 75,000 thoughts a day, and 57 thoughts of those are habitual, and 45,000 of those are usually negative.
See, this is the thing that blew my mind when we had this class, Suzanne.
Right. So we have those many thoughts. But when you start to think about your thoughts, when you start to actually listen to them, you realize that there's that many of them.
and that 45,000 are negative. That was crazy.
Right, and that everything started with a thought. Like even the light bulb first existed as a glimmer in Edison's mind. And then we talked about how our thoughts lead to our words lead to our actions, and our actions lead to our reality. We also talked about those negative thoughts, those automatic negative thoughts that we might think. When we focus on negative things, like we said, or we might mind read or fortune tell, or always or never thinking is a big automatic negative thought. And we just asked everybody to recognize that they have these thoughts and just to let them pass through their minds. And we talked about another type of thought that oftentimes people will have. And the Buddhists have a term for this continuous flow of distracting babble in our minds, and they call it the monkey mind. I like to call it the drunk monkey, because it's more like a drunk person jumping around in your head, just chattering endlessly and shrieking and saying crazy things about what can happen and worrying about the future and things like that. So we talked about the drunk monkey and how to recognize that that's not really you thinking, that it's just really your own monkey mind saying crazy things to you. Then we went on a little bit in that week 3, to talk about the law of attraction. And we talked about that Mark Victor Hansen says, what you think about, you bring about. And we also talked about the fact you probably heard sayings like attracts like, birds of a feather flock together. So we kind of went into what the law of attraction was and how what we put out, the energy, the vibration, the thoughts we put out are what we get back from the world, and how important it is for us to really have positive energy, positive vibrations and thoughts so we can attract and reach the goals that we want to have in our lives.
And then the next week, week 4, we talked about conquering negative emotions. And this is a really, really important topic, because everyone's going to have a negative emotion every now and then. How do you conquer them? You have to first notice them. And we talked about anger being a motivating force. And that angry people can be more optimistic, which sounds weird. But anger is a stronger emotion than depression. We talked about, in relationships, if someone has been mistreated, once they get angry and they say, this will never happen to me again, I won't accept that, that is actually moving in a positive direction. And then we identified the 7 basic emotions, which are anger, fear, fright, grief, joy, worry, and pensiveness. These emotions will play on all of us at some point in time. It's really important to become aware of what's making us angry and why. And then we talked about, what do we do with our negative emotions? So in order to work through them, we had to be present, feel validated in that you have the autonomy to choose and to react and to feel a certain way about whatever is going on. It's okay to be angry for the moment. It's just not okay to stay there, that your emotions are yours. Acknowledge that you are where you are, and that's okay. No, this class wasn't to say that you shouldn't be angry. It really was to say to own your emotions, but realize that your emotions don't own you. And that you don't need to be consumed by them or drown in them, and you don't have to stay upset. And we also said that know you know what you're feeling, know if you are angry that you choose to be angry, and I'm going to be angry for 24 hours, and then let it go if you can. Be gentle with yourself. Realize that overcoming negative emotions is how to heal from difficult or devastating experiences. It takes time to put negative emotions behind you, so we talked about that.
And then in week 5, we talked about self-care, food, water, sleep, and exercise. And the first thing we talked about was, just like this girl, is getting rid of that junk food and how important it is. We gave some tips on how to do that. I believe the first one was to clean out your pantry, because if it's not in your house, you can't eat it. You're probably not going to go to Baskin-Robbins to get an ice cream. You'll probably have an apple instead. We also talked about the 5-ingredient rule, that when you do buy processed foods, make sure that they either have less than 5 ingredients or have fewer ingredients, the better, and also make sure that they don't have any ingredients in them that you don't know what they are or you can't pronounce them. And then we talked about exercise and how important exercise is and how our bodies are programmed, genetically programmed to move. And that means, run, jump, swim, lift weights, do whatever it is you like to do. We talked about the fact, and this is the honest to God truth, and you guys, that people that do exercise have probably experienced it, exercise is the most potent and underutilized antidepressant there is, and it's free. It really helps with getting rid of the blues, conquering negative emotions. If you're having a negative emotion, I believe we talked about one of the things you could do would be take a walk. That's exactly why, because your body secretes endorphins that help you after you exercise to feel better and be in a better mood. We talked about some different types of exercises you could do. We talked about making sure you have some sort of exercise schedule, so you do actually exercise 3 to 4 times a week. And then we talked about sleep and how important sleep is. Oh, geez. And how it's so important to regenerate our body, mind, and soul. And if we're not getting the right amount of sleep or the right kind of sleep, so just because you're asleep doesn't mean you're necessarily getting the right kind of sleep. You have to be getting that deep sleep and that REM sleep. We talked about some tips for sleeping better. And the first one was, much to my dismay, even though I know this, turn off all your devices, your TV, your iPad, your phone, everything about an hour before you go to sleep. It'll be a lot easier to go to sleep. We talked about the fact that those devices emit a higher concentration of blue light than natural light, which affects our levels of melatonin, and that's why they interfere with our sleep patterns. We gave some ideas on how to sleep if you can't sleep well, what you can do. Talked about lavender oil, natural sleep aids, etc. And then we went on to talk about water and the fact that 60 to 70% of our bodies, or might even be more than that, are made up of water. So our bodies need water to survive, and it's essential. Think about it. Every living being on Earth needs water. And we talked about the importance of how much water to drink, which was half of your body weight. So just to keep a rounded number, for example, if somebody weighs 200 pounds, they should drink 100 ounces of water per day. So we talked about some tips on how to do that. And a lot of this is in your book,
right, Suzanne?
Yeah, it's a lot of this is in my book. Yep, it sure is. And then we talked about self-care and how not taking care of ourselves isn't making us a hero, right? It's not making us able to take care of our families any better, and how we do need to take the time out to take time for self-care. We gave some ideas on things to do. These are some good ideas here. I like that one. Bubble bath, gardening, meditation. And then we did talk about meditation and how important meditation is. These were all the things to kind of work on your physical being to make it easier for you to reach your goals. We did a little meditation, you guys remember. And we talked about how meditation helps us be more in the present moment, be more relaxed, and more inwardly focused.
And then the next week, which was week 6, which we were kind of almost halfway through, we talked about the power of being optimistic and what it does. That optimism helps you cherish life. We mentioned that being optimistic gives you a reason to live because you know the future holds promise. And then we said that being optimistic creates better relationships, right? That optimists enjoy more positive relationships because other open-minded people are drawn to them. Isn't that true? And then we said that being optimistic makes you happier. And we reminded you that studies have shown that optimistic people have less anxiety and enjoy more happiness. And then we reminded you that the good news is that you can learn to be more optimistic. And these are choices that we make every day. Another choice was gratitude. We talked about the power of gratitude. Gratitude it's when you focus on what you have rather than what you want. It's because we have so much to be grateful for. I always say that even in the framework of what's going on, if we just stop and look around within the framework of that, we can pull up some things, some conditions, people, kindnesses to be grateful for. Gratitude also provides a life-enhancing benefit, making us more present, because when we are grateful, we have to be present to look and see, what are we grateful for? You can't be grateful for something if you aren't experiencing it in that moment. So you become more engaged in living when you put your attention on being grateful for the beauty and the wonder in your life as it happens. Then we reminded you what Oprah said, the power of gratitude. She said the greatest thing you can do to change your life today is to start being grateful for what you have right now, that no gesture is too small when done with gratitude, that gratitude can be practiced no matter what is going on in your life, and everyone has something to be grateful for. By concentrating on what's good and giving it your energy, you attract abundance. But if you focus on what's lacking, money, time, resources, you will never have enough. And she says lastly that gratitude opens the door to abundance, to abundant consciousness. because it gets you to the source, which is the source of all things. And Deepak Chopra, we mentioned, the world-renowned mind, body, healing pioneer and co-founder of the Chopra Foundation, says the power, the wisdom, the creativity of the universe comes from gratitude. When you open the door to awe through gratitude.
And then in week 7, we went on to talk about living in the present moment. And the fact that when you think about it, really there is no past. There's only the memory of the past, right? And the future is just a figment of our imagination. We don't really know it's going to come in the way that we think it's going to be. So when we talked about the thought and all that worry that we do, it doesn't necessarily mean it's going to come true. We wasted time worrying. So we talked about how important it is to live in the present moment, and that really life is going on right now in this moment. That's where our life awaits us. But a lot of times we don't notice it because it's human nature to squander our precious moments by, like we said, thinking about the past and worrying about the future. I know I've been guilty about this. I'm sure all of you have as well. And then we talked about how to know if perhaps you're not living in the present moment. Like we said, if you're worrying about the past and lamenting about the future when you're doing activities that should be fun and relaxing, for sure you're not grounded and you're somewhere else other than your body. We talked about being detached from our bodies and how that means we're not in the present moment, and how that hinders our ability to be in the present moment. And then we talked about some ways to live in the present moment more. And one of them was to pay attention to our 5 senses, to pay attention to our sense of smell, to really smell the roses, so to speak, literally, when you're walking down the street, or, I don't know, when you're in the grocery store, or maybe when you get home and somebody was making dinner, and actually smell the delicious smells. We talked about looking at our sense of sight and taking in all the beauty that's out there, like this beautiful hummingbird. I know I have I have several hummingbirds in my backyard, and I'll just go out there and just look at them, and it just brings me right back to the moment. We talked about our sense of hearing and tuning into that, tuning into what do we hear. Talked about our sense of touch, like really being aware when we hug somebody and that good feeling that you have when you hug your best friend or your kids or your husband or your whoever. And what am I missing? Sight, taste, of course. We talked about honing in our sense of taste and bringing it back to the present moment. I don't know about you guys, but I know there's been many times when I've gobbled down delicious meals and not even tasted them. So we talked about really noticing the taste, the texture of our food while we're eating as a way to bring us back to the present moment. We also went into a whole lot of other ways of how to do that, but really tuning into your senses is an easy way to bring you back to the present moment. Wanda?
Sorry, I was coughing, so I took my
phone
on mute. We talked about building self-confidence in week 8. And we described what confidence is, that it's the assurance that you have in yourself and in the powers, in your own powers and your own abilities that you possess. That confidence is not to be confused with self-esteem or self-worth. You know, we discussed that self-esteem is defined as a favorable impression of oneself, but self-worth is defined as a sense of one's own value as a person. Having self-esteem and having self-worth then leads to having self-confidence. I gave you some self-confidence building exercises, and we wanted to help you to identify when you have low self-esteem. The next slide.
Oops, sorry.
Was,
there we go.
Yeah, symptoms of low self-esteem. Some people don't realize they have low self-esteem. When you're attached to money or looks or status, that might mean that you have low self-confidence or lack of assertiveness, easily influenced, stuck in your comfort zones. Um, you've met people that constantly need to prove something to others and you wonder why. Well, they could be suffering from low self-confidence when they're filled with self-doubt, insecure, plagued by fears and failures. So these are some of the symptoms of low self-esteem. But we talked about processes to move out of the low self-esteem, and one of them was to get a notebook every day and start using it for recording all the good things that you managed to do. We talked about patting yourself on the back for the good stuff that you've done. Sometimes we just bump over that. We've had a good day, recognize it, anchor it into a notebook. One of the most important self-confidence building exercises, without a doubt, is the exercise which can have the most positive influence on your entire person is your mindset. The mindset that, hey, I can do this. And, my mindset I've used for years, I don't know, even when I was in my early 20s, was even if I didn't think I could do it, I always said, God and I can do anything. And all of a sudden, man, it gave me enormous self-confidence. And then lastly, we shared the quote with Joel Osteen that said, from Joel Osteen, it said, I believe that God has put gifts and talents and abilities on the inside of every one of us. And when you develop that and you believe in yourself and you believe that you're a person of influence and a person of purpose, I believe you can rise up, he says, out of any situation. So that was self-confidence.
Then we talked about in week 9 our emotional IQ, not to be confused with our intelligence IQ. We talked about that our emotional IQ allows us to understand, empathize, and negotiate with other people better. We talked about the 5 major categories of emotional intelligence, which are self-awareness, self-regulation, social skills, empathy, and motivation. And with self-awareness, we talked about the fact that developing self-awareness requires you to tune into your true feelings and to evaluate your emotions and be able to manage them. We talked about that self-regulation, that people that have a lower emotional or EQ have little control over their emotions when they experience them. And we talked about that there's techniques that you can use to alleviate negative emotions, like we talked about in a couple classes before, such as anger, anxiety, and depression. And then we talked about motivation and how being able to motivate yourself for achievement requires clear goals and a positive attitude. And if you can catch those negative thoughts and reframe them into more positive terms, this will help you to achieve your goals and keep your motivation. And then we also talked about that empathy is another one of the measures of emotional intelligence. The ability to recognize how people feel. It's really important in your success in both your home life and your career. So the higher your emotional intelligence is, the easier and the better you are at discerning the feelings about other signals so you can control your own signals.
And then, we talked about emotional intelligence and our emotional IQ and regular, IQ. There's a difference. My daughter asked me the other day, do you have to have a high IQ to have a sustained or cultivated emotional IQ? The answer is absolutely not. That the emotional IQ is something that we develop over time if we work on it. If we understand that we don't have to free fall into a dark spiral, no matter what the motivation is of that, the falling part, the depression or the fear or the frustration. Yeah, they'll come, but emotional IQ helps us to move out of those and figure out ways, whether it be exercise or whether it be petting our Piper, our dog or cat, or helping us to make a shift. And we also talked about a little bit about children too, and helping them develop their emotional IQ. Yeah.
Right. And then also how to work with our emotional IQ at work, and how to build strong relationships at work, and talking about our attitude, having a good attitude at work, etc. That was on emotional intelligence. Then in week 10, we went on into our emotional guidance system.
Yeah.
Yes, which, like what we said was, when we think about it, how good are we at understanding, identifying our own emotions? Sometimes it's not that easy to exactly figure out what emotion we're feeling. We may know it's bad versus good, but trying to figure out where it is on this scale. We introduced this scale to you, the emotional guidance scale, with the lowest emotion you can have being fear, grief, depression, despair, and powerlessness. And then the highest emotion or vibration or energy you can have being joy, empowerment, love, appreciation. And we talked about how to move up the scale, because we all want to feel better. We don't want to stay down there at insecurity, guilt, and unworthiness. We want to remember that our natural state is joy. We talked about the fact that children are operating probably a lot more in the joy, freedom, love, appreciation on a daily basis, right? And we asked us all to remember that our natural state, when we came here to this world, our natural state is joy. So we talked about how to get back to that joyous state by moving up the emotional ladder. We talked about a book called Ask and It Is Given by Esther and Jerry Hicks. They're the people that actually developed this emotional scale. And they talk about how to raise your emotions up this scale. And it's easiest to travel through the emotions one by one. It's pretty much impossible to go from depression to joy. Think about it. So we talked about steps and different processes to help us raise our emotions up that ladder one rung at a time. And we went through a scenario, remember, Wanda, about a woman who wanted to lose weight, and how at first she was thinking, yes, oh my God, I can't do it, I'll never lose weight. And we basically talked about how she would basically move up the rung little by little to believing that she can do it. Yes. And moving her emotions up and her vibration up and her feelings up rung by rung to feel better. So we talked about a couple of the processes on how to do that. And then week 11,
we talked about the DISC personality assessment. We actually described that the DISC is a measure of observable personality traits and powerful predictor for future behavior. Also, that DISC is a universally accepted and highly validated instrument for measuring behavior. Lastly, the DISC provides a common language, which is important for talking about human behavior, and provides a doorway for open communication. The founder, we mentioned, Robert Rohn, made us realize that this is a powerful way to understand people. When you can understand the DISC personality assessment, even if you're interacting with someone that hasn't actually taken the assessment, you can kind of put your finger on where they might fall in the personality characteristics. And that if you can do that, then you will have a better opportunity to interact with them in a way that is that they would be more responsive to. The DISC we mentioned is D as an acronym. The D standing for dominant personality characteristic, the I for influential or influencer, the C for the critical thinker, and the S for steady. So critical thinker or compliant, and for the C, and S is a steady. And that the DISC has actually been around for more than 75 years. So it's withheld the time, and people use it. When I first went to Keller Williams, it's the first time I ever heard of the DISC personality test, and it's the first thing they gave me when I was contemplating the job in management to see where I fit in the characteristics that would make a good manager. Some of the contributing factors that we talked about in the DISC is number one, heredity, and number two, role models, and role models up to the age of 12, actually. And then we mentioned, and then experiences in your life after the age of 8. All of those three, heredity, role models, experiences, will help determine your personality characteristic. And then, we also said that personalities change over the years, depending on what your life's experiences are. As they change, your personality can change to meet those, or perhaps you don't find that you need to be as strong in one area because your lifestyle doesn't require that. So you kind of maybe might fall back into a more relaxed personality profile. We also mentioned that it's a good way to really get a better hold on understanding family members, not just at work, but in taking this class, I immediately began to identify my daughters. And it does help to understand where they're coming from so that you don't continually say, why would she say that? Because if you know that she's a D or you know that she's an I, you can kind of understand where they would be coming from. And then we also mentioned some of the celebrities to help us understand the difference in personality profiles that have stronger characteristics in one or another. So, and then lastly, we talked about the value, general highlights, and general ways we all have a little bit of each personality characteristic within us, but we talked about how to become a better, holistic, whole person, that just because we are an I or a D doesn't mean that we can't be, maybe a little softer as a D, or an I, maybe not so talkative and gregarious, but, just kind of assess the situation. So that was our week on the DISC.
And then here we are. Congratulations, everybody.
Yeah.
You did it. That was our 12 weeks. Tonight was just our overview to have you remember what we talked about during the last 12 weeks. Hopefully, everybody took away some ideas to have a deeper understanding of yourself, and now you're really ready to manage your energy to meet your goals in 2017.
We would really appreciate it if you get the survey, just to let us know what you feel, what your experience was, answer a few questions for us. That would be very cool. And if you feel so led, to send us a testimonial that we could use as we build future classes.
And also, just a quick note on the survey, it literally is 6 multiple choice or just fill in the box questions. So it literally will take, what, a minute to fill out. It won't take you any time at all. But we do want to get your feedback so we can do what our students, I guess we'll call you students, our participants want us to do in the class. So just if you could take a moment to fill that out, that'd be awesome. And then, of course, we want to hear your testimonials. So we're so excited that everyone made it through the 12 weeks.
Yes, including us.
Including us,
colds and the bronchitis and and life.
And life, yes.
So
do you want to?
Yeah, I want to go just say our affirmation. Oh, thank you, Michelle. I saw something from you. It popped up.
Oh, good. Time went so fast. Isn't that true, Michelle? Jeez.
Our affirmation, and by the way, we will be notifying you of other presentations as we pull. This is not our last. This is our first together, but we've really enjoyed it. We want to make it better. We want to make it so that it speaks to the needs of the women in our community.
Well, I want to hear too. Let me say one more thing about that. We'd like to hear if, and I think this question's on there, is any suggestions for future presentations too. We'd love to hear any suggestions on what you'd like us to present on, or what you want to know more about. Or maybe I had already talked to somebody who was in the class, and they told me that they would like to see more in depth on a couple of the topics. So maybe we put together a class on instead of it being just 1 week, it ends up being a whole week, maybe on thoughts or emotional IQ or DISC or whatever. We want to hear from you what you guys would like to see more of. So, all right, on to the affirmation. Sorry about that, Wanda.
Okay, no, I'm glad you said that. So just together, I'll read it, and you can read it with me to yourself, that change is the essence of life, and being willing to surrender what you are for what you could become.
I love it. I love the image, too.
Love it. Love it, yeah.
Love it. Love it.
So good night, everybody, and we'll have this on our Facebook page too, our last class.
All right. Thank you so much. We've enjoyed it. Hope you have too. Bye-bye.